right, we are going to talk about some recent announcements from reInvent. It's still December when I'm recording this video, December of 2025. And so reInvent just happened 3 weeks ago, more or less. And so wanted to talk about some of the announcements as it relates to not only cost predictability, but cost optimization. There's one thing I've learned across my 10 years of using AWS, both as an end customer and also as a solution architect working for AWS partners, is two things that companies tend to put off. One is cost optimization, the other is security. So I'll be talking about announcements for both cost optimization and security as I review over a number of 5 or 6 videos all the announcements made. But for this video, let's talk about cost optimization and some of the new features that were in. One of the things that is challenging, I think, not only for IT departments when they move to the cloud from an on-prem situation, but also from an accounting or a finance or a CFO perspective, is IT typically, you're buying capital hardware, you're spending money once every 4 or 5 years, and that is a pretty constant pattern. And now in the AWS, your bills can differ from month to month based on what's going on, based on how much development you're doing. And sometimes that's hard for CFOs. And so there is some ways AWS is making cost prediction a little more accurate, as well as making it easier to save money. Not surprisingly, they don't always lead with saving money. Obviously, they are a for-profit business, but luckily they are supporting those of us that want to save money in any way possible. They continue to add features to allow to do that. So we're going to talk about 6 different announcements being made. One are database savings plans, a new way for you to commit your RDS spend. Second is if you use CloudFront for content caching in front of web servers, you now have an option to make that flat rate instead of being more or less a variable rate based on utilization and usage. Cost Explorer now can predict out for 18 months with some more AI-powered metrics and rationale as to why AWS came up with that cost forecast. We're going to talk about a new efficiency metric to help you understand how well or how poorly you're saving money in the cloud. We're going to talk about some cost anomaly detection improvements. As with any other AWS service, they're always making continual improvement. And then lastly, some automation. So Compute Optimizer, I'll go into Compute Optimizer if you haven't used that before, but now they're providing some automation to make it easier for you to enact any changes to help you save money. So database savings plans. Before this announcement, to save money for RDS, and I should say, it says database savings plans, but this database savings plan doesn't apply if you're running MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server, any other database, Oracle on an EC2 instance. This really should be RDS / database savings plans, because a lot of these databases, you're only going to save money if it's running on RDS. But there are some non-RDS platforms also. But just keep in mind that if you're running a database on top of EC2, this savings plan doesn't apply. You would use your typical EC2 reserved instances for savings plans. But if you're using a database, and we're going to talk about all the different services that are covered, you could save up to 35%. The old way with RDS and these databases, you'd have to use reserved instances. And reserved instances are inflexible. You have to pick a specific database platform, then you have to pick a specific instance type. And so when AWS preaches about modernization, maybe instead of using Postgres or MySQL, you should move to Aurora. Same Postgres or MySQL support underneath, but it's faster, it's more highly performant, it's less expensive. And so it's difficult for them to preach that type of modernization or move away from SQL Server. Stop paying Microsoft SQL Server licensing, move to Aurora. But when the savings plans don't reward you for doing that, that's a tough sell. So out goes the reserved instances for RDS and databases. The new way is savings plan. And that is just $1 commitment per month that you're going to, you can think of this per hour, per month, but basically you're committing to a spend amount, whether it's 100% of your spend, which I don't recommend, maybe more 80, 90%. AWS will recommend a certain spend amount as long as you're not thinking about exiting the cloud within the next 12 months. Highly encourage you to take a look at these savings plans, see what AWS recommends. If you are using databases today, it's definitely a much nicer way to save money. Another big change is these RDS savings plans, you can only pick a 12-month window. Keep in mind, a lot of customers don't pick a 3-month savings plan for EC2 or a 3-year commitment. Anyway, 3 years is a long time to commit to anything. So I think AWS realizes that. And so for the new database savings plans, you can only sign up for a 12-month. How does it work? And AWS has a recommendation engine to make this easier. But basically, you calculate your average usage. AWS will do this for you. You can do this manually. How much are you spending on databases every month? Then you decide how much of a commitment, anywhere from 1% to 100%. AWS has some sophisticated logic to calculate what it believes is the best spend commitment. And keep in mind, your AWS database spend is going to have peaks and valleys. It's going to have high periods and low periods. So I've never seen AWS recommend you make 100% spend commitment on your highest month. You'll notice that it's typically anywhere from 70 to 90%. And then once you put in that savings plan, you are covered across any database platforms that are supported under plan, any database instance types, none of that inflexibility with reserved instance. So what kind of databases are covered? Well, anything that is RDS. MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, SQL Server, MariaDB. If you use a managed database, and for those of you who aren't familiar with RDS, think of this as a managed database platform. You don't worry about the Linux or the Windows operating system. You don't worry about patching that. You don't worry about optimizing the configuration of the database platform running on Windows or Linux. You just interact with the database as a service. And so a lot of times the customers that I work with realize, boy, RDS is more expensive than if I ran a database on an EC2 instance. Well, that's because AWS owns the responsibility of managing that operating system, keeping it patched, making it easy for you to back up your database. And the new savings plan makes moving into a managed database a little more financially attractive. Still more expensive than managing the database yourself, as you might expect, but the new savings plan makes it a lot more. DynamoDB, Neptune, DocumentDB, Amazon Aurora, ElastiCache, MemoryDB, Amazon Keyspaces. These non-RDS services are also covered by savings. So when AWS makes a recommendation, it's going to look at all of these services and help you make a savings plan commitment that makes sense. So unfortunately for my lab account that I keep going and use for any hands-on demos, I really don't have any long-term RDS instances to show you recommendations. But when you move to savings plans recommendations from the billing and cost portal, you're going to see now, and this is highlighted in blue, there's a new database savings plan option. Once you select that, you'll notice your savings plan term is 1 year. Unlike EC2, you can't pick 3 year. So 1 year is the max. You can say no upfront as the option, which is what I always recommend. I rarely see companies doing partial upfront or all upfront. In fact, I think over the last 4 years, I've only seen maybe 2 customers do all upfront, and that's typically from a SaaS provider who has customers committed to a certain, say, a 3-year commitment to use the SaaS offering on AWS that this customer was selling to their customers. And so if a customer signs up for a 3-year commitment, then your savings plan or your reserved instance would be safe for 3 years. But typically, always encourage no upfront. You can look at the last 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, unless you made a drastic change over the last week. I always encourage at least 30, if not 60 days, especially to take a look at a rolling average. And then it'll come up with the recommendations. You don't have to follow the recommendation. I would always say take a look at that recommendation, make sure it makes sense. You don't want it to be 100%. You don't want it to be 50%. Typically, anywhere between 70, 85% of your spend is a safe amount to commit to in terms of a CloudFront. They made some announcements. CloudFront is one of those services that is based on how much content are you caching in CloudFront, how much data is leaving CloudFront to go out to the internet. It makes it hard if you're a seasonal business, you're in the tax business, you're a retailer, you're in a school system. A lot of businesses had different peaks and valleys throughout the year. CloudFront now, if you use that in front of your web servers to cache content such as video, you can cache images, you can cache CSS, cascading style sheets. There's a lot of content that can be cached, moved closer to the user and off of your web server. And now there's a way to get some pretty consistent pricing. It's a flat rate. I encourage you, if you use CloudFront, take a look at these pricing plans that have flat rate pricing. If you don't use CloudFront, but you run web servers on AWS, take a look at CloudFront. Maybe kick the tires, see if it'll increase performance for your customers, as well as give you some advantages of moving a lot of the image serving off of your web servers, and let AWS do that with it. Cost Explorer moved from a 12-month to an 18-month forecasting window. I'm not sure how exciting that is. To me, if you move to 18 months, that's more of a guess, because a lot can change in terms of new business, new technologies. Maybe you're moving from on-prem to the cloud. Maybe you're doing some future work with generative AI, aka Gen AI, that isn't in your current spend now. But I think what is interesting is there is new AI powered explainability. So it's not just, hey, here's your spend 12 months, 18 months out. It's here's the accuracy that we expect. Maybe it's 95% down to a 70% expectation in terms of accuracy. It'll say why certain spend amounts are being predicted. And so it gives you a lot more rationale, all provided by machine learning and Gen AI. But it's really the numbers were there previously, but now there's a lot more business context in that forecast. You work for a company, and I've been a CIO, I've been a CTO, I work for companies that really didn't do a whole lot in terms of strict budgeting and forecasts, and I've worked for plenty where you had to do updated forecasts either by quarter or the second half of the year. So keep this in mind, that if you ever need to, or if you want to just polish up your knowledge of AWS cost optimization, cost forecasting, take a look at this new AI enhanced forecast. So here's what some examples of what the AI is going to explain. It's going to explain why your EC2 costs were increasing, and it will call out if there were specific EC2 instances that are driving that growth. It's going to take a look and identify seasonal patterns. Whether you understand the seasonal pattern or not, it's going to detect the seasonal spikes and low periods, and it's going to use that in the forecasting. It's going to use confidence levels. It'll do a high, medium, and low. Some companies like you to have high confidence. Some really want to know, even if it's medium or low confidence, if there's a chance for it to go up. Sometimes finance departments will accept a medium or low confidence. And then anomaly impact. It'll take a look at those one-off anomalies. Sometimes, let's say you bought something from the marketplace and that shows up into account, and maybe it was a 12-month license that's going to be a one-time hit for $10,000. Well, you don't want that to be predicted every month. So the AI engine is going to take a look at those anomalies and make sure that those are not included in the forecasting other than maybe once. With Security Hub, one of the things AWS did is they came up with Security Hub Security Score. And that allowed you to understand, are you getting better or worse at security? And now AWS is doing something similar with Cost Optimization Hub. They're allowing you to view a cost efficiency score. And this efficiency score helps you understand, are you using the right instance types? Are you using larger EC2 instances than you need to? Maybe you migrated from on-prem, and I see a lot of VMware and Hyper-V environments. Typically, since you bought that hardware, you're going to use those virtual CPUs whether your applications need it or not. On AWS, you only pay what you use, so you're not rewarded by over provisioning. You want to use as few memory, as few hard disk space, as few virtual CPUs as you can get away with. So it's going to take a look at your instance types. Can you right size those to save money? Are you using savings plans or reserved instances? You have idle resources that you're spending money on, but they're not performing any useful work. Maybe you can back them up and delete them. And are you following general best practices? And this cost efficiency metric is going to help you see over time how well you are performing cost optimization. Also a great metric to include in quarterly reports. If you're responsible for saving money, hey, we were at a 30 when I took this over. Now our efficiency metric is at a 70. Maybe your target is 80 for the cost efficiency metric. It's never going to get to 100. You need some variability, but you definitely want a higher score. And so instead of saying, hey, I didn't save any money last quarter because we've saved as much as we can, it's, hey, we're keeping our efficiency score, or maybe it went up just a tick, but it's another way to reinforce to your leadership, to your team leader, to the finance or accounting department that, hey, we are being very cost economic when it comes to workloads. And so cost anomaly detection. Cost anomaly was always there from a service level. Are you spending more in RDS or EC2 or EKS or CloudFront? They always look for account level anomalies. Hey, did a certain account increase in spend? Are there patterns that now look like anomalies? Those were always there. But now you can set this cost anomaly detection for all accounts within AWS organizations. If you use multiple accounts, hopefully you're using AWS organizations and AWS Control Tower to manage all of your accounts collectively as a single group of accounts. Now you can say, hey, I want cost anomaly detection for all accounts within my organization, maybe just for. I have a hard time, really thinking, hey, do you not want cost anomaly detection? Maybe in a sandbox, you have some wild spend patterns that are expected, and you don't want cost anomaly reports coming off of that. But then cost category patterns, you can monitor based on tags. You can monitor based on regions. So the scope really now can be a lot more granular than it used to be. So definitely encourage you to take a look at cost anomaly detection and all the new features, whether you're interviewing for a job or whether you're managing an AWS account today for your employer. Definitely educate yourself on all of these costs. So the advantage really here is that the sooner you understand cost anomalies, the better. Don't wait for the bill to hit. I had an AWS customer come to us saying, OMG, they just had, I think, 1,200 new EC2 servers. They're not over in Asia Pacific in the APAC region, but all these new servers were created out there for Bitcoin mining. And they didn't realize it till the bill hit, came to us for some help. And so you want those anomalies to be hit faster than your monthly bill will. Learning when the bill hits is a little too late. If it's a security compromise, hopefully you have guard duty and other security tooling to tell you that. But I think the cost anomaly detection is another way to find out that, hey, something bad happened. Maybe it was we shot ourselves in the foot. We didn't understand how to cost optimize. We released a new feature, a new AWS workload, and those prices got out of control. Or maybe it is a malicious actor. But the message here is the sooner you learn about some wayward costs, more time you have to react before your finance department. So I think this is pretty exciting, and this just goes along the lines of you see all these software providers, including cloud providers, using AI, using machine learning more and more. Now with the compute optimizer, they are throwing in optimization saying, hey, cost optimizer identified ways for you to save money. For instance, you're still using GP2, GP3 EBS volumes are not only cheaper, but they're faster. Automation allows you to decide what cost optimization techniques are you going to give AWS the ability to make a change and allow you to achieve those savings. In a production account, boy, I'm going to have to play with this a lot of months before I would ever consider recommending to a customer you allow these to happen in production. But dev, test, sandbox environments, there might be some savings like GP2 to GP3, getting rid of EBS volumes that have been out there for 5 years. Why not just back those up, store those on S3, put those in Glacier, get rid of the more expensive EBS volume. But take a look at the automation. There may be some good ways for you to not only be notified, hey, there are ways for you to save money, but maybe some safe ways that you say, hey, AWS, if you see an opportunity to save money, I authorize you to make that. So how does the automation rules, how do they work? Well, first you define scope. Maybe not the production account, maybe just dev test. Maybe you only want to do this in your dev account. You want to get familiar with it. You can do that by specific accounts. You can do that in regions, or you can say only in resource tags. Maybe all your test services have a environment tag that says tests. Say, hey, the scope is just tests. You can set thresholds. Do you want recommendations that are only at 95% confidence? Or are you willing for a dev or test account to have lower confidence levels? Maybe it won't save you money, but maybe it would. So you have some control that way. You can exclude resources, exclude production, exclude mission critical resources. Again, more granular control. You don't want automation just to, unfortunately, make a change that your customers realize just impacted their performance. But again, make this granular, work on a small subset, get familiar with how the automation. I personally would not want any of this, even in a non-production environment, without someone seeing what is being recommended. So you can add an approval workflow, make these recommendations, let someone on your staff review. Maybe it's a lead, maybe it's a manager or director. Once they approve it, then let the automation do the heavy lifting. But I would say require manual approver. If you let AWS do what it wants to do and you just trust it, then you're more trusting. And the great news is there's a rollback. If you tell it, hey, if there's EBS volumes that aren't being used anymore, back that up for me. Delete the EBS volume, back it up to S3. If you realize you made a mistake, you need that EBS volume, instead of having to roll that back manually, you can do that within the compute optimizer. Hey, roll back that change. I want you to put that EBS volume back, or I want you to change that instance type back to the way it was. Even if it's a non-production environment, you might realize there's some adverse situations sometimes. So that rollback capability is great to have. So what are all these announcements in summary? Database savings plans, clearly educate yourself on that, especially if you're using AWS today and you're using RDS. That's a great way to save money for your database spends. If you use CloudFront, if you use content caching or want to use that, check out the flat rate pricing. Your finance or accounting department, your CFO will thank you for some consistency when it comes to costs in the cloud. Take a look or experiment with the forecasting. Take a look at how AI and machine learning gives you greater business context on how it's forecasting spend. Cost optimization efficiency metric. Measure yourself on how well your remaining cost optimized. It can be great 1 month or 1 quarter, and here come new services, new workloads. Then all of a sudden, you're leaving money on the table when it comes to savings. So get in the habit of checking your efficiency metric. Look at cost anomaly detection with machine learning. There's some great features there. And then maybe kick the tires on automation. Familiarize yourself. How is the automation working? How can I put the scope small enough to kick the tires on it, get familiar with it, and then expand the scope over time as you begin? So action items, look at your database spend, look at CloudFront, look at your baseline scores, look at anomaly detection. I've learned with security and cost optimization, set some schedule. Have some times, maybe every month, every quarter, every year, to set aside certain tasks related to both security and cost optimization, because sometimes we all get buried. It's a fire drill. You're doing a lot of different things at work. Security and cost optimization are rarely the squeaky wheel unless something really bad happens. So you need some kind of preventive maintenance or task schedule to help you out. So I'm going to include links in the YouTube video for blogs, other announcements that were made, give some great background information that AWS provides. I'll also link to some YouTube videos from reInvent from this December so that you can listen to AWS explain this probably maybe a little bit better than I did, or maybe not. But I'll give you these links to these resources so you have time to take a look at your. And then I'm going to be doing a series of videos of announcements made at reInvent. I think too often, if you're using AWS, you tend to do things the same way month after month. You don't always get a chance to learn what's new, what you should be doing. So I've got 5 or 6 different videos planned. The next one I'm going to make a little more interesting in that it will be hands-on, and it's really showing it's early days still, but how AWS is using AI agents to help you manage your environment so that we don't always have to have many years of experience to be great at managing AWS. Over time, those AI agents that are trained on proper AWS management, they're going to be there to help us, whether it's security, cost optimization, best practice. So I'll give you an early look at how those agents are really designed to help us. As with anything, it's version 1.0 now. So, is it ready for prime time? I'll let you be the judge, but I will give you some hands-on look at these AI agents and how they can help you. As always, if you have any comments, please include those. If you have any questions about cost optimization, you have a question about my background, my work as an AWS customer, from large startups to large multi-billion-dollar global organizations, or my work as a solution architect for AWS partners, or if you have any tips and tricks for anyone else who wants to learn about saving money, please include those in the comments. And for now, I'm going to close this video, and I'll see you next time.